We're excited to share this program with you. Chris and I have been talking about doing it forever, and the fact that we're finally doing it is actually a big deal, right? I can't believe it.
Right?
So thanks everybody for showing up on time. We appreciate that. We always give a couple minutes for everybody who's showing up. It would be great, since you do have chat access, to make sure you direct message us in the chat and say, hey, here's what I'm thinking, or here my experience is. It would be awesome if you just literally just type in your name and share where you're actually zooming in from. I found that to be fun. Tell us what city you're hailing from. If you're an athletics fan, just represent your crew, or if you represent a different city because you've been displaced, please just tell us who you're rooting for. Awesome. We got Steve in Austin. I see also Newburgh, North Carolina. Very cool. Starting to see these come in. All right, very cool. We
Go
have Go
Bucks. I'm here
Bucks.
in
There you go.
Tampa as
Oh, you can
well.
see it. Very cool. Thanks, Tony. For some reason, I can't expand my window, but all right, it is what it is. Connecticut. All right, we're in Philadelphia. Just so you know, I'm in Philadelphia. So you're in Buccaneer territory. That it does mean I'm in Eagles territory. So I'll say that out loud.
I'm a,
Um,
I'm a East Coast 49er. If I'm to stay true to my grown up team, I grew up in the Bay Area, but
got it.
the other Bay Area, not the Tampa Bay Area.
Awesome. We got a lot of Florida here today. Okay, and San Diego. That's fantastic. All right. Well, please take a time to basically be involved in this. We have a smaller group today, which is going to make it really easy for us to take customization into this program. And if you're joining this program today between Chris and myself, we've been talking for a good amount of time, ever since Advice Tech Live in November of last year, about this real big epidemic. And I hope you guys know it as financial professionals. The epidemic has really been a lot of our clients really don't have their estates in order. And they haven't answered these kinds of basic questions that we take for granted these days, right? So, as so much of the industry has really moved to financial planning as well as asset management, and this is not an insurance webinar. This is really about estate planning and the intentional decisions we need to help people make. So we're going to actually not only point out things I think you probably are seeing in their day-to-day financial planning, as well as what I would tend to see in my practice, and now the practices of thousands of others that are really sharing with us what's happening. This is a real big problem. So I appreciate, Chris, you taking the time to help us understand how you guys are approaching solving some of this problem, making it scalable in this, proverbial, how do you scale these solutions? So I hope you pay attention and take something from this. Chris, anything you want to add before we get started?
No, just that we're super excited to finally be doing this with Asset Map as well. Excited to be here today, share this with everybody. And like Adam says, keep it sort of interactive, post your comments, questions. We'll pause a couple times and ask, if anybody's got a story or an input to share with us. But we also want to be respectful of everybody's time, keep it moving along as well.
Absolutely. Okay. So one of the things that we thought would be really helpful is to use a case, a real life case. The names have been changed, that we use, called the Jenkins household. It's been modified actually for this. If for any reason you've actually seen the Jenkins, or we've used it in prior training before. But let me kind of get you acclimated for how we tend to look at the families. Now, for those of you who know Asset Map, you know that we tend to enable financial advisors to put this up on the screen at the beginning of every meeting to say, hey, let's just make sure we're literally on the same page. I've taken the liberty of creating this visualization for you and your household. Let's just make sure we've got our facts straight in this typical KYC requirement. Now, for those of you that don't know, at the very top is the family or the household members. And this happens to be Tim and Christine. You can see Tim and Christine in their early 50s. They have two kids, Maureen and Josh, 19 and 15 years old. They're also, we would say, I don't say necessarily dependency, but their grandma, Beatrice Hauser, recently widowed, which kind of necessitated this conversation because they just went through dealing with the estate of her husband, her late husband. And there's possibility now that she's going to be financially dependent upon them because they didn't get a good financial planner many years ago. Never brought it up as clients. They said, mom and dad are fine, until they actually inspected under the hood and found out dad had all the wrong stuff, didn't really have wills and so forth. And so it motivated them to take some action, as you can imagine. There's also a business partner who's actually in his 70s. That would be actually Christine's business partner. You can see he's getting on in age. Of course, we have a bunch of questions about that we'll talk about. They have a small company. They also have a special needs situation because Josh is Down syndrome, and they're very involved in the Down Syndrome Research Foundation for the past bunch of years. It's been an important aspect of their family. They also think charitably about it and so forth. So it's really important for all of us on this call to make sure we level set as to who and their why, right? Who's important and why they're doing all this stuff, because that's going to really be the motivation. So we really clearly know their family and are talking about them all the time. It's an important aspect. Let's figure out if we can get to know Tim and Christine and what they've done financially. You might notice over here on the left, on Tim's side, Tim is still actively working. He's making pretty good money at Comcast. He also expects in the future that there's some Social Security benefit. A lot of clients don't tend to know what their future benefits are. Obviously, we can all project them or get off the statements. But we found it was really important to also talk about this because we know it's in the future, not today, so it doesn't roll up to his current income. This is a future income source. No different than Christine, who, as an active history school teacher, has this active side business that she does over the summer with her business partner, John. And this is something that they weren't really thinking was going to be a big thing. It was kind of a hobby business, both of them teachers. And then, of course, it wound up becoming something more meaningful. She's taking as much as almost $30,000 a year out of this business every year. They have some other pensions that you'll be familiar with, as well as Social Security in the future. And someone sold them an annuity a while back, which they don't really understand, which is a guaranteed minimum income benefit account. They expect about $14,000 a year from this future value instrument. So that's important for all of us to know. So when you think about it, they do have active income of about $285,000 a year. So really strong income as a household. Good to see that. Let's look at their assets. This is where it starts to get interesting. Tim has has a couple of different qualified retirement plans, both his active 401k, which he's contributing to, plus he has his old 401k. He left there, as you know, we all tend to see a bunch of years ago. He moved employers. And from pharmaceutical, he never moved it. So it's over. Vanguard hasn't looked at it in years, doesn't have any idea how it's doing, what he's paying. But if it was a hassle, as you can imagine, Chris, he never got to it, right? It's a classic situation. He also has, as many of our clients in corporate America have, they have these future stock purchase or RSS or some other form of options that tend to have value. They don't deserve to be in the present value of his balance sheet, but we know at some point in time they're going to be worth value. We need to pay attention to them. A lot of clients don't understand how to manage them. And you can see also they had done some 529 planning for Maureen and ABLE plans for Josh. For those of you who don't know, the 529 version of this for special needs kids is a viable estate planning tool in many states. Although we all know that the investments may not be, let's say, as competitive as other things that they could do, this can be an interesting tax strategy as well as gifting strategy. You'll see that they were told to do this a bunch of years ago. Don't understand it, by the way, Chris. They couldn't explain it back to you what this means, but they know supposedly it's good for them. They do expect that at least Tim on his side is going to get an inheritance from his grandma. We don't really count on it. It's in the future. But you might notice there's a really large account in his name alone. And this is going to be an interesting conversation because what happened is a bunch of years ago from his prior company, he had stock options and his advisor told him simply just to execute that and manage the money, and still manages it today in his own name. So you'll notice it's a loan in his branch. That means it's in his name alone. It's not a joint asset. Why? Well, like most things, it just never got handled, never got taken care of. They never kind of repatriated it into the family. They executed the options, they paid the tax and left it there. Does that make sense? I don't know. And when you tend to see this, all of a sudden, Tim also reveals that he has this vacation home, which we learned was actually in his own name because he had it prior to marriage. And this is like kind of a family thing. And so he's been holding this, even though they think of this as their joint family home, in his name alone when we do the inspection and say, well, oh, that's really in your name. So that's an important aspect. Sometimes we miss that as financial advisors. Clients just take it as sacrosanct as, oh, that's the joint, et cetera, whatever it is. And we don't actually inspect it or ask deeper questions. So this is going to be an important aspect for our discussion today. What does Christine's side look at? Let's look actually at her assets. you can see that she has actually set up a SEP associated with her side business, and she has an active 403B. Not really a lot of other retirement savings because she has a pension that's been contributed to for many years. But you can also see that somebody sold her an annuity, a non-qualified annuity, a bunch of years ago. That's where that GMIB benefit was tied to. And they also have her split interest. They're thinking the business may be worth as much as $900,000. Now, I don't know if that's true, Chris, but that's what they think it's worth, her and her business partner, even though it's generating 60 some $1,000s a year. Who knows why the people value what they value. Bottom line, we're putting it on our asset map as something of worth based upon what she said it's worth. We don't, what is the exit plan? I have no clue. Something we probably need to explore. And then lastly, she has some cash value in the whole life insurance policy that she has up here that her grandfather actually set up for her years and years ago. Doesn't understand it, doesn't know why, what it does for her, but she just knows that she has it. Okay. Almost done here. Joint assets between them, 309,000, a bunch of savings and checking accounts. Okay, this makes sense. They did do some crypto investing a bunch of years ago. That number's probably double now based upon when we took this. Some brokerage accounts that are mutual funds, excuse me, that are joint. And then lastly, their primary residence, which has both an open home equity line of credit and a 30-year mortgage at 3.9%. So I think at this point, we pretty much all know their financial stuff. And when you look at the insurances that protect them, you can see that in addition to Tim's basic group term life, the only other life insurance he's carrying is actually a trust-owned or special needs trust policy for $250,000 that when he, 2 years after having Joshua and learning that he's really special needs, they were told to do a special needs trust. They haven't looked at it in years. Their documents are old. They think that whatever they did years ago still stands. We all know that there's probably reasons to explore this. But for the most part, we tend to see from an estate planning side, these guys probably need some work here. You notice that Christine has some insurances here. We don't know anything about long-term care. They just didn't tell us and so forth. What is the kind of early takeaway, Chris, that you start to see from this composition?
Well, right away, there's obviously some issues, right? The obvious ones around maybe being a little underinsured and having assets not shared actually in both names or proper documents, all the
Mm.
what always strikes me when I see this is what an amazing tool Asset Map is to put a visual in front of your clients so that they start to have a better understanding themselves. And to Adam's mantra about great conversations is you are prodded or prompted to have these really important conversations to uncover these problems, right? That's what always hits me when I see this.
Very cool. Well, and that was many years ago. The whole point of AssetMap was just to make sure we actually could confirm we knew the facts, but of course, allow us to the transparency to say, yes, let's have this conversation, or why are you doing this, or have you thought about this, or how do I need to help you fix and fill what I see? I think for those of you in the financial planning space and wondering where you go from this, whether we're just looking at Tim or we want to force a conversation about, let's say, the kids and what are they doing and what do we need to pay attention here? Or for some of you thinking, okay, how do I deal with the fact that I really want to just talk about Josh and his special needs trust? The important part of this is for us to get clear about why what we're seeing exists. In other words, what's the intentionality of these choices to, let's say, put money into CDs in a special needs trust to, let's say, pay the premium. I don't, what's the intent about this? So where we tend to stay a lot of time is in the intentionality of the financial instruments. But what we are seeing missed a lot is, are we asking the questions of what's the plan or what's your ideal outcome in these events beyond the finances here? We can easily tell them whether they need insurance or if they need to save and so forth and run their financial planning. We can do that stuff. But I think what's really being missing, and the reason that we put this specific together, is because we wanted to address the question of what can we do as financial professionals to take clients down a journey that they're actually going to follow beyond saying, hey, you should do your wills and you should do your trusts. Because unfortunately, you know what happens as soon as they leave that office or that Zoom meeting? They go back to life, right, Chris?
That is the mantra I always have is by the time they walk from your office to their car, they've thought of 5 reasons why today's not the time to deal with that, right?
Exactly.
It's just it's real easy to put it aside.
Absolutely. Well, with
Yeah.
that, why don't we transition to what we can do? So let's get right into
Sure.
the meat.
And I want to just say again how
Mhm.
cool it is that you were on that one screen where it had the little problems, right? You had your little red for loss of life. And how awesome is that? That's just a great visual to tell the client, hey, look, we're missing something. So let me grab my screen here.
Okay, I'm gonna turn
You'll
mine.
have to stop
Yep,
sharing. There we
you
go.
got
You knew that. You're a professional.
it.
You don't even use a net probably. Let's
You mean
see.
when I'm a trapeze artist, or?
Yeah. Here we go. Did that come up?
I see your screen. Yes.
All right, awesome. We're seeing Estate Guru. Perfect. All right, so let's jump ahead. What we want to do today, after seeing that amazing view of, the Jenkins family and their situation from an estate planning perspective, now let's have a look at what potential challenges do they face. And we're going to look at three scenarios today. We're going to look at what if Tim's incapacitated, if Tim dies, and then eventually when Tim and Christine both die. This is the one we always are thinking about. When we say estate planning,
Mhm.
we always think of it as when both spouses are gone. But there's a lot of work that needs to be paid attention to along the way. So let's deal with Tim's incapacitation, number one. This is a big darn deal, right? Number one, you're going to see on across all three scenarios, the number one thing is loss of control. The moment Tim's incapacitated, he has no more control anymore. Unless there's a plan in writing, we have no idea if what will he would like to have happen will or will not happen. This is where living probate comes in. A lot of people don't know that term, living probate, but
Mhm.
essentially that means somebody's got to be appointed Tim's guardian to make healthcare decisions for him, to make financial decisions for him, right? And so that means the court's involved. It doesn't always mean that that's going to go smoothly, right? Often there becomes a battle for control. In this case, maybe someone else thinks other than maybe someone thinks Tim's wife Christine's been abusing him and they should be his guardian. I mean, there's all kinds of crazy things can happen here. What happens if the wrong person is put in place? I'll share a story with you briefly. Is the other day I spoke to an estate planning attorney who says this is probably, in his opinion, the highest risk situation there is when the finances are assigned to the wrong person. Most probate courts are going to make the spouse the healthcare power of attorney once you've gone through the court proceeding and so forth. But if the wrong person is in charge of finances, this can be devastating. And the case that I'm aware of was not too long ago. This gentleman had a small business, was generating close to $500,000 of income to him each year, but the wrong person took over that estate. 6 months later, that business was defunct. It was
Mhm.
basically gone, run into the ground. So this is a huge issue, and people really need to understand that it can be, so simple. We all know this, right? Get a financial power of attorney in place, and you're going to be a lot better off. And so all those assets, the business interests are at risk with incapacitation. So that's incapacitation. We could talk a lot about it. I don't know, Adam, you've been doing this a long time. I don't know if
Mhm.
you've had any personal experiences there as
Too many.
well. But it's a big deal.
Well, I would
Um,
just, the only thing I would throw in there, Chris, it's amazing the number of times when we are scrambling because we hear that somebody is incapacitated. They don't have durable power of attorneys. We don't have copies if we're managing assets. Now, all of a sudden, who can we talk to, right? There's a challenge that we are running to, and you're seeing regulators getting even more strict on this one, that, because there's too much litigious, stuff going on, the beneficiaries or the spouse or the ex-spouse who, so they can all get involved, and it's like a free-for-all. So I think this is a really big one. We should be pushing all of our clients to have some form of on-file durable power of attorney or other documents that support our ability to share information as well as execute plans.
Absolutely, absolutely. One of my shameless plug for Estate Guru is, guess what? Subscribe to Estate Guru, and powers of attorney for your customers or anybody you want are free anytime, as many as you want. That's just
There you
something
go.
we decided as a company. That's a way we can help.
That's great.
Um, let's explore second scenario. What happens in this case, and after looking at the Jenkins family situation, what happens if Tim dies? So at death, some of the challenges we're going to face here, number one, like I said, loss of control. If he has no documents in place, he has no control over what it was he would like to have happen. Um, we talked about being underinsured. How cool is it that with Asset Map, we can identify that, put it in their face and make sure it doesn't happen. Estate Guru is not going to fix that, but you and Asset Map are. Probate of non joint owned property. I've got the vacation home here, but Adam threw another one at me here today. I didn't catch was the 450,000 or so that is owned. It's in a brokerage account that's Tim's own. Tim owns on his own as well. Those assets would need to be probated in order to get them into Christine's name. Doesn't automatically mean it's going to Christine though, right? If there's no will or document in place, they are up for contestation. Is that a word that I just made up?
Contesting, I think, yeah.
Yeah, they can be contested, right? So those assets are potentially at risk and delayed transfer, et cetera. And then we don't know. You always want to check beneficiaries on all the qualified accounts. Has Tim ever changed the beneficiaries? You guys all as advisors. By the way, full disclosure, I'm a retired advisor, but we all know that we're checking these beneficiaries. But that's a big part of what you do. We hear stories all the time of, hey, I still have my prior spouse on, my old 401k or whatever it is. So we definitely want to be aware of those. So that's if Tim dies, some of the problems we might face. Tim and Christine both died. This is, as I mentioned, this is the most common scenario. I don't want to beat a dead horse, no pun intended here, but yeah, we know this is a problem when you die intestate, right? Again, number one, loss of control, delayed distribution, right? If you don't have documents in place, even if you have a will, you're going to go to probate first in most cases. Their assets, Christine's business interests. How did she, we don't know anything about the structure of her business and succession plan. But again, having Asset Map and putting all that in there has you in that conversation with Christine. Now you can talk to her about a succession plan and have that in place. So we want to absolutely be doing that. For a lot of people, they don't realize that probate is going to make their estate viewable to the public, right? Nothing's private in a probate proceeding. And again, asset distribution, how they want their assets to be distributed is now at risk of contest, right? Same story here. So a lot of challenges they face. And then always checking beneficiaries for both of them on their qualified accounts.
Now, let me just throw in something there, Chris.
Yeah, please.
One of the things that we tend to see also, because I started in estate planning 25 years ago, was the fact that, as you've already said, the beneficiaries on the insurances, the ownership of the insurances also creates some interesting challenges, either at the local jurisdiction or in the federal estate tax level. Granted, this household doesn't look like they're having a federal estate tax in its current form, unless we learn something else, or the laws do revert back. But one of the things that's really kind of interesting, especially because a lot of families don't always disclose to their advisors that they have special needs situations for which they may be getting or expect to get state forms of aid. And this is really where we see a huge disparity, Chris, in terms of intentional allocations to special needs trusts. It turns out the trusts from 15 years ago may not actually hold up in terms of allowing them to still qualify for state aids. So if they haven't been looked at in a bunch of years, that may not help anybody. Some of them have, everyone thought, oh, I just put all I named the beneficiary of all my qualified plans going into the special needs trust equally because I have 2 kids. And there's some real failures here that people have made assumptions on and advisors have given them bad information. So when you start to see something like this, you really want to get the right skilled advisors on this stuff and not try to just automate it or just wing it. So I think that's an important aspect to ask better questions as advisors. Are any of these situations in play and what have you done about it?
100% agree. And again, the beauty of this is when you see those things, then obviously you need an attorney to chime in and review maybe that older special needs situation. And you can do all that here with Estate Guru. So how big is this problem for advisors? Well, statistics here are interesting to me. When we look at the general public, we see 65, 70% of folks don't have these documents in place or they're not up to date. That's a pretty scary number right there. It does get a little bit better in the advisor world. Advisors tend to, I know, as I said earlier, you're all telling your clients to go get these documents, so it's making a difference. I wish it was a bigger difference. We're still running about 50 to 55% in the advisor space. Your clients still don't have this done. Your book might look different because you're really good at getting your clients to get this done, but in general, half your book of business probably either doesn't have documents or their plan is not up to date. So speaking specifically to the Jenkins family, or let's speak to that 50% of your book, how can you do a better job of helping your clients get this done? I know it's difficult. There's a lot of friction in the system, but that's what Estate Guru is all about. I live in Tampa area here, and there's Dottie here's a great advisor partner of ours, and she shared a story with me the other day saying, look, I finally got fed up with this client. I've been chasing them around for 9 years to get their documents done, and I finally tricked them, she said. She admitted, I said, on their annual review, they came into the office not realizing that what they were really going to do was get their estate plan done. So they sat down, and in under an hour, they were done. The guy says to her, my gosh, Dottie, if I'd known this would have been this easy, I would have done it a long time ago. The beauty of that was, if you notice the second paragraph here, she actually ended up sending, or they ended up sending Dottie 3 more family members to get their docs done, and now they're all clients. So the idea here is, I was talking a lot about control earlier. Now you're in control of taking this process, taking your client by the hand and getting it done. I want you to think of Estate Guru as the conduit. Our software is the connecting tissue. We're going to put you, your client, and a real attorney together. We'll remove that friction, let you get this done, help your client get this done, and you can actually get paid for your non-attorney role in this process. I hear from advisors all the time how frustrated they are. I gather all the information, I put it all together, I hand it to the attorney, and he puts it in a Word document, and he charges $3,000 or $4,000 for it, right? Now you can be that driver, that quarterback in the process, get paid for it, be safe and compliant, because there's a real lawyer who's getting paid for the legal work. How this works from a very high level. Typically, the advisor is the guide in this process. It can be you, it can be your staff member, anybody on your team. We have a self-guided option. If you want to send the link out to your client, let them walk themselves through, that's available as well. It's the least effective way because, again, you're giving it to your client and saying, hey, go fill out this form or go through this questionnaire online and get it done. It's a topic they don't love. They're likely not to do it anyway. So you end up just chasing them around, right? You probably spend more time chasing them than if you just did it yourself. There is a third option I'll tell you really quickly with Estate Guru. We call it our Plus program. And that says, just introduce your client to us. We'll do a Zoom meeting with them. We'll walk them through the attorney interview. We'll get them right to the point where the documents are ready to be shipped out. Simple, adds a couple $100 to the cost, but it's a really simple process. We do about 15–20% of our volume goes that route. And I'm happy to obviously talk to you more about all that later. But the main thing here or one of the big things is that these are real lawyers practicing law via our software. This is not an intake form. This is algorithm, logic trees, that's going to help you and your client through. Step 1 is triage. Essentially, that is our software asking a series of questions for the lawyer so that that lawyer can recommend what they should have, given the state they live in, the laws in that particular state, the tax situations in that state, and so forth. So you'll get a real lawyer recommending what they should have. That lawyer's name's going on the cover letter. They're responsible for those documents. Step 2 in the online interview is customization. You're going to be guided through. Now you're going to start saying who gets what and when will they get it and any kind of conditions you want to put on it. All along the way, algorithms are monitoring this, and I love this part of what we do. We call it attorney triggers or attorney link triggers. If your client answers a question in a way it looks like there might be something a little more complex going on, bingo, that's flagged for a live conversation with the lawyer or someone on that lawyer's team. Number 1, to protect that client. Make sure they're getting proper representation. There is no additional charge for that conversation with the lawyer. They can make notes in the actual attorney's file so that 20 years from now, when the estate is being settled and there's some questions being asked, we have a real lawyer. There's notes in the file, and the advisor's not getting dragged into a problem. We can back that work up. And then last, we move on to the approval, execution, and funding portion of that plan. So that's real quick around. Now, sort of the why it works so well. Again, control. I use that word a lot. Maybe I got that from my dad. He was a big control guy. But anyway, control. You get to control your client's experience. Not only do you get to help them get it done, I hear all the time, Adam, you probably do know this really, really well. When you're referring out to attorneys, you're at the mercy of that attorney's customer service, so to speak, and the things that come out of their mouth. And do they confuse your client? And so, do they muck you up your plan? There's all kinds of that goes on. So now you're in control of the client experience. We are paired with a nationwide network of attorneys, great attorneys, really strong network, so that if something is a little more complex, it's a nice seamless handoff. We're not going to say, oh, can't do it in our software. You're out, see you later. It's a nice seamless handoff. We can still help them in a traditional relationship with that attorney. By the way, it's less than 5% of the plans that are started on Estate Guru end up off the software, off the platform, being done direct. So it's very rare. Two reasons for that: the software is really capable, number one. Number two is advisors are a great filter. They understand very quickly who is a good fit for Estate Guru and who isn't. Obviously, we're removing the friction, the barriers. We're trying to make this easy so we can go from 50% of your book to maybe 10 or 20 or zero someday, right? Make this really easy. In fact, probably most of the comments that we get, positive comments, are around the process, not the price. We're really affordable, but your clients love the price, or the process. Super robust in our capability. We're obviously streamlining, and as a fraction of the cost. We'll see costs here in a second. I'm going to stop real quick. Adam, any comments coming in? I don't see them now.
No, I think
anything to add?
There's
Okay.
I don't see any comments that require a response at this time, Chris. I think what's really important is to frame at least the problem as I've been seeing it too. So hopefully this relates, you can relate to this. For the clients we know, from the most basic to the most complex, we know they need to have this conversation. In fact, some of you on this call probably need to execute this yourselves. Let's be honest, okay?
I
The
get a lot of
classic
that, by the
shoe
way.
cobblers, right? I tend to think 8 and 10 people don't have this stuff done. So if the 60% that are honest and saying they're not getting it done, I think that's even being nice. Most people haven't really addressed this one, and it's because they don't have an advocate driving it. There's really a couple directions we all know we can go as an advisor. And I think it's really cool just to frame this for what Estate Guru is doing. What we're really talking about is getting the best of both worlds of a technology that accelerates the conversation and basically starts the ball rolling, but also making sure that there's a human aspect to this, because for those of us that don't necessarily trust that a digital only process is going to encapsulate us perfectly, I think it's a niche that you've created, right? We've all had experiences with attorneys who want to charge 10 grand and basically create 1,000 pages, and when nobody can read it or understand it, nobody has access to it. That doesn't work always. And certainly the direct, just, get it for $10 online is not going to meet our clients' needs. They're not going to do it. So I think this is really interesting just to frame that for everyone attending.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. We really do find ourselves sitting right somewhere on the scale as close as you can get to that experience of sitting in the lawyer's office in the fancy leather chairs and paying the big bill. But you're not, but we are simplifying it, keeping it simple. So looking at the process to give all of you an idea of, okay, if I'm going to take this on for my client, what's it look like? Step one in triage, just a view into our portal. You're going to log in. Most advisors do this with the client on a Zoom meeting. I know a lot of you work virtually. This works beautifully for that. If you're working in your office, pull up that monitor, walk through this with the client, make the process super transparent. They love that. You don't have to do it that way, but most advisors and their teams are doing it with the screen up, clients watching. Put in the client's name. Here's Tim Jenkins. I've got them living in California. That's probably the wrong state. Sorry if I got the wrong state there, Adam.
That's okay. We have some people from California, I see.
Yeah, that's right. But
That's a tough, that's a tough state.
yeah, it is a tough state. So you're going to choose the state the client lives in. After that, you get a drop down menu where you can actually choose the lawyer. We give you information about the attorneys. If you don't want to choose the lawyer, we'll choose it for you. You choose a lawyer. When you click through to start this account, you essentially are launching into that lawyer's portal. And that lawyer, again, is now practicing law through our software. He or she is going to ask a series of questions, the same questions they'd ask if that client was sitting in front of them in their office. It looks just like this. I'm not going to give you every screen here, but I want you to see us go through how simple this is. Are you married, Tim? Tell us about your spouse. So you type in Christine's information. The lawyer's going to ask some questions like this one. I mentioned those attorney triggers earlier, where something might be looking a little more complex. I wanted to give you a taste of what that looks like. This is one of those questions. It happens in this triage section, and it says, hey, do either of you have a lot of assets that you don't consider owned by both of you, or do you want separate trusts? A yes answer to that will indeed trigger an attorney review. It doesn't mean you stop in this process, because obviously when the lawyer's office calls this client, they want a complete picture. And maybe, as Adam and I were talking about earlier, maybe they'll even want their asset map along, so the attorney understands their picture really, really well. But so you'll just say yes in those cases where this is a part of their situation, and you'll move on through. There's little blue question marks. You can hover over those at any time in our tool. That's going to be the attorney giving guidance as to what he or she's looking for, or answering commonly asked questions. That's going to help things move through smoothly. We ask about prenuptial agreements. That is another one. If there was a prenuptial agreement, that's going to trigger a live attorney review as well. Of course, the attorney is going to ask about existing documents. No lawyer is going to recommend anything without knowing what's already out there, right? So if there's anything on this list, just check the box that tells our software to ask a new series of questions so that we can replace those older documents. Actually, this is a really cool way to replace older documents. It's streamlined, the pricing's the same, it's easy. We do a ton of that. The lawyer asks about owning real estate, because that's a big probate trigger, and then approximate value of all their assets. So a few simple questions. Then you get a little response summary when you finish a section in Estate Guru. You get to look at all those answers, make sure everything's right. And then you get a visual intro into the actual attorney that's assigned to this client. What's really important about this, and really unique to Estate Guru, is that now you have a real lawyer in the state of your client's residence making a recommendation for their documents. That's practicing law. Anytime you recommend documents, you are practicing law. So you have this lawyer doing that. It's recorded in the Estate Guru software. Your client's going to sign off on that. So nobody can come back to you as the advisor and say, hey, you practiced law by recommending X, Y, or Z, right? So that's really important part. You'll notice pricing of a married trust package is $699 with Estate Guru. That's true in all 49 states we do documents in. For those of you wondering which state, and you immediately go, oh, what state? It's Louisiana. They still have Napoleonic code down there. It's a little bit different. We'll probably add Louisiana here eventually, but right now we have a couple great attorneys down there, but the software won't generate documents in Louisiana. So this is the recommendation list. We're not going to charge them anything right now. So when we click start my plan, you get a dashboard or 5 tiles that represent each of those items that the attorney just recommended. You'll notice that the powers of attorney say ready to sign. You'll always do those first. As I mentioned earlier, power of attorney packages are free for anybody, anytime, as a subscriber to Estate Guru. So you do those POAs, and then you jump in and you start building their trust. Here you just gather family info, same format, one question at a time, very simple. You have children together. Now you're in a conversation about their kids. And so this is, tell us about your children. You learn a little bit about them. This is a great relationship building tool, as is Asset Map, right? We're both kind of coming at this from a different angle, but the idea is getting to know this family and understanding their situation. In this case, we have I put in this case a little different that Josh's already receiving some aid, just so you could see that functionality. One thing to note is we have special needs language in every trust we send out, whether we indicate a yes or no here, so that, right, we don't know if one of these kids, maybe Maureen ends up on SSI someday, right? We don't want to leave her out, and have it cause a problem. So there's always special needs trust there, or special needs language rather. And then we get to name, Josh was a minor, right? So we name a guardian for him. We're always going to do that if the birth date indicates that there's a minor involved. We're going to name who's in charge, successor trustee. A lot of times your clients don't know what that is. You hover over our little question mark there and it explains them, right? That's the person in charge when you can no longer be in charge. And so we've named those people. They can serve alone in that order. They can be co-trustees. Simple enough. Then we start doling out the property. Very simple. Who is going to get your personal belongings? Joint children of the, most people are going to say, hey, it's the personal stuff. It's my couch, right? And my pictures and my stuff and Adam's skis and whatever it might be, right? They'll say, hey, give it to my kids equally. They can have a garage sale. We don't really care too much, except they might want to make some specific bequests. Pretty common, right? It could be charitable giving. It could be, classic car that's sitting in the driveway. One of the collection of guitars that they received from some classic guitar, whatever it is. Say yes, describe the asset, name who you want to give it to. And then we get to the balance of the joint estate. Hovering here is going to tell them, hey, that's the money in the real estate owned by this trust. They're almost always going to split it equally to their kids. So you literally click here and you're done. How easy is that? Super, super easy. It's going to go per stirpes if they want to make per capita or make adjustments, or if it's a blended family, they can deal with that. Now, you're going to keep going. Just one question at a time like we've been doing, but I didn't want to drag you through too many more of those questions. Let's just look at because a lot of times when people look at these online solutions, you're thinking, it's the most basic bottom, that's a real simple template. Can't do much with that. Estate Guru is different. We're pretty capable. This you'll see here, there's lots of things we can do. A couple of the highlights are, number one, the triggers, making sure we keep everybody safe. I think one of the most popular things we've had come up, as strange as it might sound, is the subtrust provision. And this is when your client says to you, if you have an older client, they have adult married children, and they say, I want my daughter to receive her inheritance, but I don't want my son-in-law to be able to get it. So we have a provision that'll help them keep that inheritance separate. We've got the special needs. We do A/B trusts for a couple reasons. Maximize tax. So your tax exemptions, right? Also, sometimes in a blended family, we're going to want to do an A/B trust so that we protect the children of a deceased spouse. That's a tool that's often used. Debt is another big one. How many of your clients have one kid out of 3 that just constantly coming to mom and dad asking for money, right? This is a conversation I know I had as an advisor. It happens often. So we're going to allow them to address debt and how do they want to deal with that. Even life estates to allow someone the right to live in a home for a period of time. So all these are no additional charge. They're found by our algorithms by asking a series of simple questions. And if your client wants to leverage them, all they have to do is say yes, and we'll add those provisions to the trust for them. When you're done, you're going to get a nice little smiling face of the attorney popping up saying, hey, congratulations, great job, everything's done. You're going to have a beautiful leather looking 3-ring binder with 24. Hey, Adam's got my sample. Look at how good you are.
I have it.
Yeah.
I'm so impressed. So when I saw this, this really kind of convinced me. It's like, wow, this is really nice, because the organization that I saw in this, and I don't know if you can see this, but it's just such a great thing that people like, well, what do I get out of doing this? They can keep using this. We tell people to put their asset maps in here. So they have a kind of like, if you're ever lost, what do you need? You need a map and you need directions, right? When you're lost.
Right.
Well, the map tends to be the asset map because everybody needs a treasure map, but now I have actual documents that tells me what to do specifically. And I think that's an important aspect. I've only seen you guys do this, so that's a really cool. So I appreciate the fact that you're taking the time to create some tangible for the survivors, because they're not going to have access to all their digital assets that are locked up because they don't know mom and dad's passwords. I need something to go and grab. So like, okay, here we have a Bible.
Exactly. No, I'm so happy you have that, Adam. That was a great surprise. I appreciate
There
it.
you go, surprise.
My prop man. That was fantastic. So yeah, it's a really nice deliverable. It's really well organized, and they're going to get that. It can ship to you or to them. You're going to have it in 7 to 10 business days. What attorney's doing that turnaround for you? I mean, it's
No,
almost
they're
unheard
not.
of. So you get a lot, you get the free POAs, you get your account manager, you get your dashboard. The client has access to a digital version forever for free from us. We'll never lock them out. So you get an awful lot with the State Guru's solution. We do have a subscription-based model. It's small. It's 59 a month or $375 a year. We're going to send an email out following this event for everybody who's been here with us today. We're going to give you 20% off your subscription. So, and you can reach out to me with additional questions if you want a demo, whatever. Here's all my contact. But I'm going to see if we got some questions coming in. And Adam, if you have anything you want to add, I'm going to kind of turn it over now. Thank you, everybody, for
Yeah,
listening and for the great setup of the Jenkins family, Adam. And before I forget, I also want to
yeah,
just a quick shout out to John Morgan over at Connected Consultants for helping put this together today too. But
very cool.
let's
Thank
answer
you.
some questions if they've got.
Yeah,
We
no,
got some
sure.
time.
How does you mentioned something about, okay, so here's a question. There's a couple. I'm gonna just put this one first. What is the cost for the advisor again? So this has an advisor platform. Why does the advisor want a subscription? Let's start there.
Because they can build estate plans in 49 states.
Okay.
They get access to our attorney network. So many of you are working virtually now, right? And you may not have a relationship in the other states, more like your home state. So you'll have a dashboard, a vault, free powers of attorney for anybody, anytime. You'll have an account manager that is there beginning, middle, and end to bounce scenarios off. Let's say you've got a client with a certain particular case going on. You can reach out to that account manager, tell them what's happening. We've been doing this 34 years. We usually have an answer at the account manager level, but if you need a lawyer to chime in, that's part of your subscription as well. The lawyer will, or we can go to our legal team and get an answer usually in 24 to 48 hours.
Got it. So that's incredible pricing for those of us that don't have, let's say, full advanced markets teams on site. You're saying that you effectively could have an attorney network that is now another resource besides ChatGPT and Google, right? So we're talking about,
Absolutely. Yep.
okay. So that's at a state level. So that's really interesting. A couple people have commented and said, what do advisors charge for their time, or how does an advisor then choose to get compensated if they're getting involved here? Do they put it in their ADV? Have you seen that being used?
Yeah, two ways. If you happen to be on the insurance side only, you make the call. Our attorneys have said there's no law that says you can't assist in this process and charge a consulting fee as long as we draw that clear line and collect your fee separately from the fee we collect. And so we see a lot of that on the insurance producer side. Most commonly on the IAR or RIA side, you're doing this work as disclosed in the financial or in your ADV2, usually under the financial planning section, and then almost every planning agreement I've ever seen has a little box to check for estate planning or consulting, and you're doing it that way. That's the best way to do it.
Okay. So, and it's the fee that the client would charge, as we saw there, that's $6.99 for getting the wills and complimentary POA. And remind me, what else was in there on the complimentary?
Trusts, pour over wills, HIPAA forms, advanced directives, everything's there with the exception of a deed to transfer real estate. That's extra 199.
But those trusts would be all testamentary trusts, right? Created via the will, is that correct? Or even
if it's a will-based package that the lawyer recommends, yes, then we would be doing testamentary trust. If it's a revocable trust, that's the recommended package, then we're starting with a revocable living trust.
Got it. Oh, interesting. Is there the capacity to do dynasty trust or other form of more advanced trust like ILITs and other types of vehicles in this method?
Absolutely. That's what our attorney network's for. So that's another benefit. Reach to your account manager, say, hey, I need an ILIT in whatever state situation. Boom, we connect you with the lawyer, get it done.
And is that pricing already transparent, or does that need to be on a state or a situation by situation
It's
basis?
currently it's a situation, but
Okay.
honestly, it's getting closer to having some additional set fee and transparency. We
Mm,
have grown to the point now, we're very excited that we've got some amazing attorneys in the network and a couple of very large firms where I think we'll be able to sort of make it a little more predictable.
mm,
But yeah, it's right now, just reach out, we'll get you connected with an attorney, and they will give a price, you're
yeah.
not locked into anything.
Got it. So this is interesting. Several people have mentioned this is really strong as a prospecting tool, given the fact that so few people have addressed this and are intimidated by it, right? So talking to an advisor might be a lot easier than talking to an attorney who's going to bust your chops for give me all your whole life's details and let me charge you several grand. And that's not always appealing. So the question is, what are you guys doing around prospecting, or how are you seeing other advisors use this as a prospecting tools?
That was
Okay,
a
cool. So
very timely question. So I
wasn't
switched.
my question. I'm just reading this thing.
I see it. I see that this is a really good question, and I just so happen to have one slide sitting here at the end. This is a guy that he's like several hundred advisors we have around the country right now using this as a prospecting tool. I can
Mm,
speak to this myself because this is how I built my practice in California and Oregon, leading with estate planning. It's incredibly powerful. It builds a relationship. It also, like Asset Map, think of
mm,
a reversible belt. You can come in on one side through Asset Map and get exposure to their entire picture and understand the gaps and how you might help them, right? Estate planning is the same way, because once you put their plan in place, and in the process of that, you're going to discover all their assets. They're going to want to make sure they protect everything, so they're motivated to divulge it all to you.
yeah.
And so it's an amazing prospecting tool, and we have some great assets, marketing assets that we share with you when you come aboard and help you market this to your book and anybody else.
Got it. Okay, fantastic. By the way, I see a couple comments about integrations, right? Typically, technology tools these days, all states, they're supposed to talk to each other. This is a situation where we don't currently actually talk from Asset Map into Estate Guru, but that's really a product of how much demand there is for it. So one of the things that I did notice is that for Asset Maps, we have, in addition to the balance sheet and the policy summary, which becomes really valuable information for the attorney as she's looking it over everything, but also we have a beneficiary statement that shows the intentionality of where those assets, under the event of, let's say, Tim's death, where they're supposed to go. And always we would find that there's a problem. So having these resources shareable to the expert eyes is actually probably more important than making sure that we form all the data in there, because there has to be a confirmation process. If we rely on the technology to just pour it off with the information that's in Asset Map, what if it's wrong? It's
Right.
not a source of truth. And so there has to be an aspect where somebody is saying, yes, this is the beneficiary, I've checked. And I think that's an important process. We can't just glaze over because it's inconvenient. And I think that tends to be one of the reasons why they don't do it. But because you're teeing it up with technology, it's going to be probably pretty easy. Is that what
Yeah,
you've
again,
been?
same scenarios as you, the tech's gonna prompt this conversation and get the list and the visual in front of them, and then you go one by one. That sort of becomes
Yeah,
the checklist, right?
that's right.
You go through them and make sure that they've done it.
Okay. Does this process require producing copies of all the documents or just stating the information?
So
Yeah.
you'll state the information, we'll generate that binder that Adam held up, and
Mhm.
then when the client executes those signature pages that come in that binder, there's a QR code on each signature page, so your clients can just upload the signature pages back to our software. We'll recognize that QR code, match the signature page with the rest of their documents, and now there will be a digital version that lives on the cloud.
Wow.
And
And okay.
the advisor will have an access to that, the client will have access to it, and obviously we do.
Mm. Got it. So that's interesting. So executing this big document is going to require wet signature. You're saying that you'll create a scanned version of that with the scanned signature page tied to the client portal so that they can go in and they can get this digitally. God forbid this gets burned up, right? Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly right.
What
And
about notary though? Does this need to be notarized?
yeah, just like anything, it's still, you think of it as it's the nice binder you got from the fancy attorney down the street. It just
Yeah.
cost you a lot less and it was easier to do. You still have to notarize it and get witnesses.
Okay.
Same way. I was going to add something else there, but it escapes me at the moment.
Oh, that's okay.
It
So I think,
happens.
yeah, no, the person was actually asking about Some attorneys actually require proof, like deeds of registrations, and they want statements, and they don't want to take your word for it that you have it. Does Estate Guru require the original documents that support, let's say, who owns the house? I don't know what else there might be here, but who owns the life insurance policy, their declamation pages, all that other fun stuff.
No, the executed signatures as uploaded suffice. You do not
Interesting.
need
Okay.
the originals.
Got it. Okay. So you're basically, so it's a trust-based system. The client is saying, I have this, make my wills as if I'm telling you the truth, right? The attorney doesn't need to verify everything.
Correct.
Okay. Got it.
Correct.
All right. A couple of comments here on, is there a client portal? I guess you've answered that. Is there anything else you want to say about that?
There is the client portal. There's no charge to the client for that. I think I might have mentioned that earlier. They'll have it forever for free.
Wow.
Oh, I know what we haven't touched on is changes.
Changes.
Okay, so $6.99 gets them their trust documents, $199 gets them their deed. Now they're set up. They can make any changes they want for 1 full year at no charge. So we give them a lot of flexibility in that first 12 months because we don't want them to procrastinate anymore. Just get it done, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to give them that 1 year window. And then after the first year, they can log back into their dashboard. The advisor can go back into the dashboard and they can make changes to their trust for $199. They can change 1 item or 10 items, doesn't matter. It's $199. Very reasonable.
You just said the word trust. Did you mean to also include their wills and or
trust, wills, changes to a will are $100. Changes to a trust are $199. Trusts, obviously, I think we all know this, but trusts have the pour over wills as part of them. It's part of our package. So the $199 would make the change to the trust and the pour over wills.
Okay. Well, that's incredibly appealing.
And we can do that because of technology.
Yeah, the clients get stuck on the cost and they're like, I don't want to spend, right. They don't realize it's going to cost them $50,000 in probate costs by leaving it the way it is, but hey, they don't want to avoid the $200. So last question I see here, it doesn't have to be last if anybody wants to just blast us with questions. What do advisors typically charge? Is there any kind of guidance on what advisors are having success with charging, or do they do this as a loss leader, essentially for existing clients, or to earn the assets?
We see a little of all.
Okay.
You might say, hey, I've got this much AUM from you, I'm gonna take care of your estate plan.
Yeah.
We do see some of that. I'd say the majority of advisors charge a planning fee. It seems to range between $500 and $1,500 on top of our fee.
Okay.
And I'm hearing more and more the way they arrive at that is they just sort of look at it as an hourly fee. How much time am I going to spend doing this? It's going to take me 45 minutes to an hour here, another hour at the back end. Maybe they've got a lot of assets to go through and talk about and funding and so forth. And so the process might be 3 hours overall. So I'm going to charge them $750. Yeah. It's kind of the thought process.
Got it. Okay. So that's great. Does this have a living will, medical directives included in the package?
Yes. Yep. Everything's there. HIPAA forms, living will, advance directive. It's all there.
Have you guys contemplated digital assets?
Yes, they're mentioned and controlled in both our core document and the POAs.
Got it. Thank you. That's a big one. I didn't even know you did that.
Yep.
Does the attorney review the final docs with the clients?
No, not in the automated platform.
Okay.
Typically, it goes through the automated process, and the attorney will do no review other than the algorithmic automated review. If some, if they've got one of those items, prenuptial agreement or whatever I mentioned earlier, then we get a consultation call that goes out to them. But everything else is automated.
Sorry, does the consultation cost any additional cost?
It does not. And 98% of the time, the way that consultation call goes is they make the call, ask all the right questions, put those notes in that legal file, then notify the advisor that, hey, we've had that conversation, everything's good to go. That's 98% of the time. The other 2% is when, maybe they discover something's a little more complex and they need to have that attorney give them a quote to do it direct outside the software.
Got it. Awesome. Okay. All right. So I know there's more questions, but I apologize. You want to use this. Can you put up your contact information, Chris, so that people can get to answer those questions? So please, for those of you that didn't get your your questions answered, please reach out to Chris and his team. They do a great job. Obviously, this is for many of you. If you've never heard of this experience before, this is really growing in steam. And you guys have been doing it. This is not overnight. This is not just a tech company in the back of your garage. The fact that you actually have the ability to do this in 49 states is really amazing, given the challenges. And I think for those advisors who recognize this is a big problem, I think we got to get on it. So however you're going to solve this problem, start by doing this. Start with 1, start with 2, start with 3, start with the clients that you know need this attention. I would recommend helping the clients get through this process. Don't just delegate it and say, hey, good luck. The fact that you can be part of this, I think, is a really, really great value proposition. So I appreciate, Chris, everything you're doing. Thank you to you and your team. Any last comments before we leave?
No, just thank you at Asset Map. We love working with your team. We love your product as well. We think we are a good match. You know, we get people thinking about really important things, both of us. And thanks to everybody for attending today.
Absolutely.
And that's a fire hose of information, I always say, but hopefully you found it valuable.
Very good. Thank you so much, Chris. And thank you, everybody, for taking the time. We appreciate it. Please stay in touch. Of course, you could always reach out to us at support@assetmap.com. And we look forward to talking with you soon.
Take care, everybody.
Bye, everyone.